Hello, this is Noreen Crone-Findlay from TottyTalksCrafts.com. I was warping up the Mirrix Chloe loom, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've been getting questions, some questions about a few difficulties that people have been having with the warp as they're learning the ins and outs of the Chloe loom. And I realized, oh goodness, I should just make a little video that talks about a few of the things that make weaving and handling warps on the Chloe loom a little bit easier. Now, I'm doing this on the 5-inch wide Chloe loom, but this also works for the 8-inch one as well. And I'm using 12 DPI combs. These hints work for, especially when I start talking about shed sticks. These particular hints are based on working with the 10, 12, 14, you know, the higher range of the combs. I'm just going to come in a little bit closer because I want to show you one of my hints and tips for doing the tail end at the beginning of your warping. What I do is I make a slip knot, and I place the knot on the peg that is adjacent to the space that I want to take the warp strands up to the top. Then I take my tail end. Oh, I always cut my tail ends at least 6 inches long. And when I'm working with 2 strands or 3 strands held together, I always treat them as if they're 1 strand. I then weave back and forth over under the pegs to the left of the of that first slip knot, because I'm going to go from left to right, warping across. So I want to weave my tail end from the right of the slip knot over to the end. Then I take my thumbnail and I open that little black cap at the end, and I wrap my tail end in there, and I've just pushed it, sorry, it slid out of range. I've just pushed it back in now, and that is going to keep my tail end absolutely secure, which is going to help me keep the warp strands, keep that tension really nicely even. So I'm going to do a similar thing when I get to the other side. If I'm going to be using the same yarn that I warped the loom with as to weave, and I will then take that yarn or thread and I'll wrap it around the loom a bunch of times, and I will weave it over. Oops, sorry, my phone just beeped me. I should have turned it off. Okay, so I will do the same thing. I weave my strands. See how I've gone in and out across? And then I wrap it around the loom a few times so that I can pull out the length of weft that I want to weave with. What if, though, I don't want to be using the same thread or yarn as weft? What if I want to tie this end off? Well, what I do is I will do basically the same thing that I did on the other side, on the starting side. And this is one of the reasons why I just love the Chloe loom so much, being able to pop those end caps off. And now I've woven across to it. I'm going to wrap around the loom from the front to the back. But again, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get my thumbnail in there. This is why I don't have beautifully manicured nails. It's because I use my nails as tools. I'm going to take this and wrap this end around the black cap several times, and then I push it in securely, like that, and I snip. My warp strands are now nice and even. I don't warp tightly, I just warp evenly. The next stage is, I'm going to come down closer to the top of the loom. The next stage is weaving in a shed stick. When you weave in a shed stick, I weave it from the right to the left. And it means that when I'm weaving I'm right-handed, so when I weave from the right to the left, I will pick up the warp strands with my weaving needle, and that is easier for me than doing that from the left to the right. So by having a shed stick, I'll slide my weaving needle into the shed, and all the even rows, the left to right rows, are pre-woven, so that are pre-picked up. Now, the thing about shed sticks is you want to, because I'm working with the 12 DPI combs, I couldn't possibly use a chopstick as a shed stick when I'm working with 12 DPI. If you're working with 6 DPI or even 8, a chopstick is fine. If you put a chopstick into a 12 DPI, it's just going to pop the lifted yarn ends. They're just going to pop right off. So chopstick, no. Bamboo, a bamboo skewer for doing, when you're skewering your I can't remember what they're called, but anyhow, the veggies and things to go on the barbecue. They work great. I snip them off so that they aren't sticking out too far on either end. And I also put a little dab of clear glue on the end, because the bamboo skewers tend to, the ends kind of fray out. They work great. There's a lot of things that work great. Thin DPN knitting needles, double-pointed needles work great. Your thin metal skewers, they also work fine too. Here's a wire. This is a coat hanger wire. It works just fine. You'll have to file the ends when you cut those off. That works fine as a shed stick. When I am weaving narrow pieces, I find the short, the 2.5 to 3 inch needle works great as a shed stick. A 6-inch plastic needle works great as a shed stick, as does, here's this one's just over, 6 inches, 6 inches long metal weaving needle works great. This is a lollipop stick. This, again, you're starting to get into too thick for 12 DPI. This works fine for 8 or 6 DPI. That's just fine, but not for the 12. So the crochet hooks, really thin crochet hooks, also work great. I'll use it as the shed stick here. And what I do is I go under, and I go under at the top. I slide down, over, and again under, slide down, over. When I'm going up and down like this, you can see how easy it is to see exactly which threads that I need to be picking up and passing over. And so I just work my way across, and that's the easiest way to get a good slick shed stick in. So I'm going to just finish weaving this, the shed stick through, and then I'm going to weave from the lower edge up to the top, because I want to talk to you a bit about some of the issues that people have with loops popping off the loom. So I'll be back. I've woven to the top from the lower edge up to the top, and you can see I have woven a very open weave, almost gauzy fabric, and that's because that's what I need in this particular project. I wanted to mention to you one thing that someone asked me about, and that is that they were having trouble with their loops jumping off of the loom. There's a couple of reasons why it'll do that. If you have, I can come back down now closer, if you are using yarn that is too thick for the set of the combs, then the warp ends will tend to jump off. So balance out with a higher DPI, use a thinner thread. And another thing that will cause your warp ends to jump off is if you leave your shed stick in too long, it will tend to lift when you're, now I have run out of thread here, but I will use up this last bit of the pink. You can see I have alternated pink and purple. If you are using your, leaving your shed stick in too long, it can cause your loops to jump off too. So when you start getting it being difficult, like this is really pretty challenging for me to pick up my over-unders. So it's at this point, it's better to just pull your shed stick out. Now I am, by using the longer weaving needle, I'm also running the risk of popping the warp loops off of the top of the combs. And so if you find that when you're using a longer weaving needle and it seems to be pushing the threads, the warp threads off, then switch to working with a shorter needle. Also, check and make sure that your tension just is even but not overly tight. And so those are all things that are going to really help with stopping the warp strands, the loops, from jumping off of the combs. One thing that I find is that for me it's often more challenging to lift the weaving off the end when it's at the end than having my strands jumping off. So of course, if you have that issue, the key is then to twist the I forget the name of the nut, the butterfly nut, yes. I have long COVID, so I have momentary gaps at times. So please excuse me, please be patient with me. So the butterfly nut, the wing nut, loosen it off ever so slightly when it comes time to lift your weaving off of the top, and then you won't be going, oi, I cannot get these warp strand loops off of the top. So those are just a few of the tips and hints that I find to be quite helpful when I am weaving on my beloved little Chloe loom. So I've also done another video about weaving tabby on the Chloe loom, so you can find that link on my page, on my blog at tottytalkscrafts.com, and I will list that other one in the little comments down at the bottom. And this happens to be for a project, for a wonderful project that I am doing with, it's a whole year's worth of projects done on the Chloe loom. And the link to that is also in the paragraph below and at the end of the video, and it's called The Lily Project. If you go to either Toddy Talks Crafts or MirrixLooms.com, and you'll find all kinds of wonderfulness there happening with this delightful little loom, and all kinds of neatness unfolding and such fun. So happy weaving, enjoy your small loom weaving, and we'll see you again soon. Oh, I just remembered one more thing that I wanted to tell you about. This is kind of a goofy little tip, but anyhow, I'm going to tell you anyhow. And if you think it's too silly, then just ignore it. This is just in the nature of a little by the way. Something I find is that at the top of the weaving, when you're getting really close to the top, that it can be hard to weave in, especially with a longer weaving needle, if with your non-dominant hand. So you know what I do is I actually will unthread my weaving needle, and then I will weave with the eye of the needle. I'll weave the next row across with the needle empty, but going from the right to the left, but leading with this is when I'm going to be weaving the row back in this direction. So I weave with the eye of the needle, and then thread in and just weave in that row, slick as a whistle. So that's just a quick little by the way. Okay, so this time I'm really done for now. There will be more, lots more. Talk to you soon. Cheerio. Bye.